Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic. Now today we've had a request to take a look at this puzzle, which is it's a type of Sudoku puzzle I've never seen before in my life. It's called an incomplete quadruple puzzle, and it was constructed by Bastien Vial-Jaime a few years ago. It's available on his blog, which I'll link under the video, and I'll talk about the rules in a second. But just to say, Bastien says this is a hard puzzle in the blog, and Bastien is one of the world's best solvers. So if he thinks it's hard, it probably is very difficult, and that's probably why it's been requested. And I had a look at the comments from those who did try it at the time, and they are stellar. So I suspect this puzzle is something of a masterpiece. Now, let me talk about the rules. You can see that each of the circles in the grid attaches to 4 squares. So this 1, 2, 8, 9 is sort of right slap bang in the middle of these 4 squares here. Now the contents of the circle need to appear somewhere in the yellow squares. So you can see that this is the only instance in the grid actually where there's 4 numbers given in the circle. So we know that these 4 cells have to be the numbers 1, 2, 8 and 9 in some order. Now for some of these other 2x2 arrangements like this one, where the 8 and the 9 is attached to the yellow squares down here, it's a lot less clear what's going on, because we know that there must be an 8 and a 9 in the yellow squares, but we don't know what the other 2 digits are at all. Now apparently this puzzle is completable uniquely with just this arrangement. You can see no given digits and just these symmetrically disposed circular clues. And as I say, I've never done one of these before in my life, so I have no clue beyond sort of standard Sudoku techniques how I'm going to approach it. Now if you want to have a go, and I really recommend it, Bastien's puzzles are always a treat. Just click on the link under the video and that will take you to our software where you can try the puzzle. Now I guess this is where I'd start, obviously. I mean, that's got to be the numbers 1, 2, 8 and 9, and you can see straight away the 3, 4 clue becomes quite nice, because we know there's no 3, 4 in those 2 squares, so the 3, 4 must be in these 2 squares. And I guess same logic applies here. Look, we know there's got to be a 5 and a 6 in those 4 squares, and they can only be in those squares. And down here now I can immediately see we know there's a 5, 6 in these 4 squares, but the 5, 6 pair we've just got here means those must be 5 and 6. So now there must be 5 and 6 in these 3 squares. Now I'm going to notate that just because on variant Sudoku I do like to notate where a number can go in 3 positions in a box rather than 2. Now the 3, 4 clue down here, again, that's going to give us a bit of traction, isn't it? This must go in these 2 squares because we know this is a 5, 6 pair, and similarly this must be an 8, 9 pair. So I think these 3 clues now, these 3 circular clues, are completely used up. We've done everything we're going to be able to do with them. So what should we do now? Well, we know there's a 5 in one of those 2 squares, and we know there's a 5 in one of those 4 squares, so the 5 must be in one of those 2 positions. Now there's some interesting logic. Let's have a look up here. We know the numbers 1, 2 and 3 must appear in one of those 4 squares, and we know the numbers 4, 5 and 6 must appear in one of those 4 squares. So we in fact know that the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 must appear in these 6 squares. So in fact these are the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. In fact I shouldn't do it like that. I should do 2. These can't be 1, 2 and 3. Those ones can be 4, 5 and 6. So these 3 must be 7, 8 and 9. So there must be a 2 in one of these 2 squares, because of the 2 clue, and we know we cannot put the 2 here. And yes, okay, now we've got a 6, 7, 8 here, and we know there cannot be a 7 and an 8 in those 2 positions. So the 7 and the 8 are in those 2 squares, and there must be a 6 in one of these 2 positions. So there is no 6 above it. Good grief. I mean, this is really... it's complicated, but it's sort of lovely as well. And saying that, I'm now 9s. Look, there's a 9 in one of those 3 squares and a 9 in one of these 2 squares. So there must be a 9 in one of those 2 positions. Three, 4, 5, 6. 5, 6 here. What am I meant to be? What am I missing here, guys? What am I missing? There must be something. I've not even put a number in the grid yet. Oh, I see. Look, 6 is there. That square must be a 6 because we know this is a 5, 6 pair. So this is a... so this 5, neither of these can be a 5 now. So the 5 must be up here. And this is a 4, 6 pair. So that gives us another couple of digits, look. There must be a 5 in one of those 2 positions. 6. Now, there's a nice piece of logic. Look, we've got a 4, 5, 6 here in this box, and the 4, 5, and 6 we know are in these 4 positions in this box. So these 3 squares must be the numbers 4, 5, and 6 in some order. Which means these 2 squares must be 3 and 7. Now, look at this. Now there's a 3, 7 box down here. So this 3, 7 rules out a 3 and a 7 from those 2 squares. So there must be a 3 and a 7 in those 2 positions. Which means we've got 3 and 7 into one of these 3 positions here. And we also know, if we look here, we've got a 1, 7 clue. And we know the 7 cannot be in either of those 2 squares because there's a 7 in the box already. So the 7 must be in one of those 2 positions. Which is probably unhelpful. But look, 4, 6, 8 here. So this 4, 6, 8 clue is now lovely because those 3 squares must be the numbers 4, 6, and 8 because this square must be a 3 or a 7. So this is a 4, 6, 8 triple, and that means these 2 squares are 2 and 5. That means this square is not a 5. Two, 5, 4, 6, 8, 3, 7. So now you can see we've got 5s pencil marked into these 2 squares, so that must be a 5, which means this is not a 5, which means this square is a 5. Apologies, just a quick, hopefully a quick, 7, 8 there, so this is not a 7. Hopefully a quick pause here while I just try and spot the next step. We've got a 4 here, and this is a 2, 4 clue, so there must be a 4 in one of those positions, which means this square down here is a 4. Now look, there's a couple of things going on here with 8s and 6s. So you can see there's an 8 locked into row 7 and row 8 in this box, and an 8 locked into row 7 and row 8 in this box. So where does the 8 go in row 9 of the grid? It must be in one of those 2 squares. Right, and the sixes similarly. Sixes, sixes. So there must be a 6 in one of those 3 positions. Wow, okay, so what next? Ah, now, here's some logic for you. Here's some logic. Look at this 5. Now that 5 is interesting, I think, in the context of this 1-6 clue. Because, look, we've got 3 7s there and there. So we know that we must have a 3 and a 7 somewhere in this set of 3. Now, ask ourselves the questions firstly. Can these 2 squares be a 3-7 pair? Now you can see they can't, because that will break our 1-6 clue. If we have a 3 and a 7 in these 2 squares, together with the 5, I can't put 1 and a 6 into these 4 squares. So this square must be a 3 or a 7. So the corollary of that is that one of these 2 squares exactly must be a 3 or a 7, and therefore one of them will be a 1 or a 6. So this square must be the other one. This must be a 1 or a 6. And these 3 squares, therefore, in particular these 3 squares, can only be made up of the digits 1, 3, 6 and 7 in some order. Okay, so now, whoops, now that's interesting, isn't it? Because now let's look at these 4 squares where we haven't got anything in there yet. We know one of these squares must be, well, it must be a 4. There must be a 4 in one of those squares. And look, that marries up with the 4s in this box down here. So we've locked 4s into column 1 and column 2 in 2 different 3x3 boxes. So these 2 squares can't possibly be 4. If we try and put a 4 here, for example, there would have to be a 4 in one of these 2 squares, and then there would be nowhere to put a 4 in the bottom box. So these 2 are not 4, and this is a 4. And now we've got 5s marrying up, look. So there must be a 5, which we knew anyway if I'd thought about it this way. There must be a 5 in one of these 3 squares. Ah, now look. 8s. Are 8s important? Because that one can't be a 7 because of the 7-8 pair here. But also, where can an 8 go in this box now? It must be in one of these 2 squares. Yes, that's nice. So there's an 8 in one of these 2 squares, which means there's an 8 in one of these 3 positions. And also, we've got the same trick going on with 8s that we had with 4s. So it's not possible for these 2 squares to contain an 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Where does 9 go? So there must be a 9 in this sort of 2x2 area as well. I'll put that in just in case that triggers something. Ah, now also, because this is a 1 or a 6, this 2-4 clue becomes more potent. I've pencil marked 4s, but there must also be a 2 in one of those squares. So this is a 2-4 pair now. 4s then marry up, so there must be a 4 in one of those 3 positions. We've got 4s in this column already, so there's a 4 in one of those 2 positions. Twos, there must be a 2 in one of those 3 positions. This is stunning, this puzzle. Not yet managed to put a 3 here. There must be a 3 in one of these 3 squares, because this is a 4, 5, 6 triple. Oops. Oh no, what's going on? Ah! I didn't mean to do that. Let me try and get rid of that. Oh, thank goodness I can. That's the perils of having a very sensitive mouse. 3. So there's a 3 in one of these squares, which means there's a 3. Now, the 3 can't be up here because this is a 3-7 clue. So the 3 must be in one of those two positions. 1, 6. Ah, I've got something else. I've got something else. Look, 6 is here and 6 is here, which is massive. Should have spotted it before, being slow, but that means that there is a 6 in those squares. Now, we know that this triple is made up of a 3, a 7, and it turns out a 6 as well. So there cannot also be a 1. Ooh, that is huge, because now this square is a 1. Because we know from the 1-6 clue we need a 1. Now, that means... I'm slightly buying for time there by sort of pausing as I try and work out what it means. That means there must be a 1 in one of those squares, look. This is all getting very cluttered. So this is a 1, 4, 8, 9 quadruple. There must be a 1 down here. Ah, yes, and that's massive because this 1 here rules out a 1 from those two squares. Now the 1-5 clue therefore means this is a 1. 5. Just 1 second while I stare again. So this is now a 3-6-7 triple. The 6 is in one of these two squares. These two squares have got to be a 2 and a 6 to complete column 7. In fact, there's an awful lot going on in this box. Where can a 9 go? Is this the only place a 9 can go? Because we've got 1, we've locked the 2, we've located the 3, we've got something on the 4, the 5, the 6. We know the 7 is in one of those 4 positions, and we've pencil marked 8s. So this square has to be a 9. Whoa. So there's a 9 up here, which means this is not a 9. These two squares are not 9, which means these two squares are a 1-4 pair. That's massive. 1-4, which means this is a 2 now, this square. That's a 4. This 2 looks at the 2-6 option there, so that's got to be a 6, which means this is the 2. So this is not a 2 anymore. This is the downside of this sort of prolific amount of pencil marking I've done here, is that actually I've got to be more careful with the pencil marks that I eliminate than I normally would be. So there's now a 2 in one of these 2 squares, which means there is no 2 up there, and there is a 2 here. How do you go about designing a puzzle of this? It's incredible. The 6 here sees the 3-6 here, so that's a 3. This is a 7. This is a 6. This must be, if we look at where a 7 can go in the middle now, it can only go in this square. So that's a 7. This is a 3 now. This is a 6, which I could have got before. Actually, I think I pencil marked 6s into those 2 squares, and I just missed it when I did the relabeling. But it's definitely looking more hopeful that I might be able to find a solution now. So 8, 9 here, 9, 9. Yes, this 9 points at that square, so that can't be a 9 anymore. This is a 9. This is a 4. That resolves our 4 and our 6. That resolves the 6 at the bottom, look. 4, 5, 7, 8. So these two squares must be 2 and 3. Which probably I can resolve. I'm just not quite seeing how. 3, 7, 1, 5. Okay, I've used these clues already. I still need to find... Ah, the 1, 7 clue, the 1 here means there's a 1 in one of those two squares now. So that's cool, because that makes this top pair here have to be an 8, 9 pair, which means this in turn must be a 1, 2 pair, which means this is a 1. I mean, I don't know what you guys make of this sort of thing when we do it on the channel, but to me, this just feels like you're observing the work of a genius. I mean, this is just stunning Sudoku setting. 5, 6. So, now can we go any further? I feel like I ought to be able to... 6 here. We already know there's a 6 there. So in this box down here, I need a 1, 5 and a 7, I think. I should be able to resolve. I'm sure I should be able to resolve that there, but I'm struggling to see the wood for the trees. Okay, so this is good. That looks fine. This looks fine. Now we've got 6 digits here, so this must be the numbers 1, 2 and 5, therefore that square must be a 9. That should be helpful because that's going to resolve the 9 and the 8. That means that's an 8. This is a 4, 6 pair. That resolves the 5 and the 6 at the top, which resolves the 5 and the 2 halfway down. Let's pencil mark those in so I don't lose track of it. That can't be a 2. 4, 6. And here as well we've got 6 digits effectively given. We need a 1, 2 and an 8 into these squares, which means we need a 7 and a 9 into those squares. Yeah, so I think we're starting to hone in on a solution. 8, 7, 9. The 7, there's a 7 in one of those two squares from our 1, 7 clue down here, so that's actually a 9, that's a 7. That means there's a 9 in one of these two squares. This square here must be a 1 or a 2. That means there is a 3 in one of these two squares, which means there is not a 3 below it. 1, 2, 5 triple, look, along this row. So this must be a 2. We know one of these is a 2, it must be the top one because this can't be. This must be an 8 and this must be a 1. That resolves the 1, 2 over on that side. Okay, so again, I think the 8 as well, that's going to be helpful. 8, 9, 9, 7, 7, 3. 5, 6. Okay, so one of these squares is a 1. The 8 must be in this square. That's nice because that forces that to be a 7, this to be a 2. Now I think I just got to do a whole load of eliminating. Yeah, 7 and 3 here, 3, 4 here, 4, 6 here, 6, 5 here. Let's not make a mistake, that would be very bad. That's got to be a 2, I think. That's a 9. This is an 8. That's a 9. This has got to be a 1, just eliminating digits down. This should be a 3, unless I've made a mistake. This is a 5. This is a 1. This should be a 5. And this should be a 7. And I'm hoping, yes, it looks like that's going to actually resolve everything. What a puzzle that is. Yes, what a puzzle. Fabulous. Now, do let me know if I should have done it more efficiently. I have a funny feeling this was an example of a puzzle where if I'd used less notation, I might have got to the solution more quickly. But I definitely don't think that was easy. That felt I judge these things by how tired my brain feels after them. My brain feels substantially tired. So I hope you enjoyed it. Do let us know in the comments as always. Thanks for watching. Back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.